You could go work on super high-tech manufacturing and then go play in the mountains or go work on the family ranch. You can do both those things. You can have an innovative, technologically savvy career and still live in Montana.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
Welcome to The Vault, a Montana-based business podcast where we highlight the people and ideas driving our region forward. I'm your host, Marcel Bruschi.
You're listening to The Vault.
Today, joining us on The Vault are two very special guests, and we're actually out of studio today. The Vault is on the road. We're on the campus of Montana State University. Go Cats Go. And I'm sitting here with Alison and Mike with their economic development team. And I'm going to let each of them give a little bit of background to who they are, what they do here at MSU. And so, Alison, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Alison Harmon. I'm the Vice President for Research and Economic Development. I've been at MSU for just over 21 years now, so it's been a great adventure. I didn't come here as the Vice President. I came here as an assistant professor. That's like a lot of people come to MSU to start their academic career. That was in 2004. We loaded up our Toyota Camry from Pennsylvania and drove the family here and started a career in food nutrition at MSU and loved doing that faculty work as a professor, but also as a researcher and someone who really liked to focus on systems, food systems in particular, liked to develop curriculum and really be a part of this Montana community. So it's been a great ride. I spent only 10 years being a faculty member and then became the Dean of the College of Education, Health and Human Development. Did that for 7 years. And then 4 years ago, or just over 3 years ago, joined this role as Vice President, which has been probably my wildest ride since coming to MSU, but lots of fun, very interesting. Every day is different. So much to learn, which I love doing.
Yeah, and I can't wait to unpack all of that. Mike, hi. It's fun to have you here.
Yeah.
Tell us, what do you do at MSU?
Yeah, I'm the Director of Economic Development and Impact, and I took a little different path than what Dr. Harmon did to get here. I grew up a West Wing kid. I wanted to be Jed Bartlett in the White House, working on that, Josh Lyman, doing that kind of stuff. So I went to Washington, D.C., worked on Capitol Hill and in policy nonprofits for a while, and while out there, met my now wife, who was originally from Bozeman, Montana. I don't know if I could have picked out Bozeman, Montana on a map when she first said she was from there. But she slowly did the long, slow sell where we came back and we went to Yellowstone. We came back, we went skiing, we came back, we went to Glacier, we came back, we went to Hot Springs. And over time, it became my idea to move to Montana. So about 5 years ago, we moved back and worked for the city of Bozeman for a while doing economic development. Then 2 years ago, the university created this position to have somebody focused on interacting with our external partners on our research agenda here at the university. And so that's been, again, a wild ride. You learn a lot. There's a lot of research going on here and things that you could not even imagine happening. And it's so cool it is happening right here in Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun things. I love that your wife is so good that she made it like that you think it was your idea. You know what I mean? I'm
definitely.
like, she's been doing the good work of her, like on behalf of herself and her family for a long time to get you guys to move. So knowing you guys are both out of market, and I can't wait to get into what you guys are doing at MSU. There's a lot of exciting things. I think economic development's very unique, and it's funny how we all find ourselves in it. But what was it like for each of you growing up where you grew up? Like, what things were you really into? And what was your upbringing like? Because you're from East Coast, you're from Ohio, right? Yeah.
Chicago.
Sorry. Chicago. You went to school in Ohio, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, Chicago. I didn't know that. Yeah. So Alison.
I'm from Ohio.
Okay. Tell us about that.
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, but outside of the city, a suburb called Wyoming, which is really interesting because we were the Wyoming Cowboys.
Oh, that's funny. And there's Wyoming right there.
There's Wyoming right over there. And there wasn't really there was only Wyoming, Ohio when I grew up. So,
Of course, Wyoming.
yeah. And my parents were both, not both academics, but my mom was a professor of sociology at University of Cincinnati. My dad was a food scientist, chemist, regulatory scientist for Procter & Gamble. So we were really Cincinnati focused, but spent a lot of time at the university growing up, writing on my mom's chalkboard, sitting in the back of the class, twitching, that kind of thing, and became very comfortable at a university. So it was a given that I was going to go to college. I didn't go to University of Cincinnati. I went to University of Michigan, but yeah, education was really important to the family. So that was going to happen.
You're like, you're going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I couldn't have told you at that time was that I would also become a professor. And not only that, but my mom was an associate dean in her College of Arts and Sciences. And yeah, that I would actually become an administrator was like, really? I didn't fall too far. But my upbringing was very happy, and I spent a lot of time outdoors and doing things like Girl Scouts and going on camp outs and playing sports and just being part of this small community that had a pretty good high school. And so it was a good transition to university life at University of Michigan, and returned to Cincinnati to work at the Cincinnati Zoo after college. That was a good wildlife adventure. I did wildlife education, and then went to graduate school at Penn State, and I studied forestry because I was interested in environmental education. And then when I graduated, I realized I'm not going to be a forester. And so I'm going to keep going to school because I don't think I'm done yet. And that's when I entered the food systems field, food nutrition, food systems, and did a doctorate in that program.
What pulled you into that? From forestry, environmental, food? It's all connected.
Yeah, it is a good question, and it is all connected, but it's not obvious. And I think the answer is that when you think about our natural resources and our wood products and educating landowners about sustainability, it wasn't complicated enough. So I had to throw in agriculture and food systems. And so it's the same idea, educating people about where their food comes from, kind of like where their wood products come from. But we all eat.
We do. And we all eat. Like food.
We all like food. And I was particularly interested as a doctoral student about how do teenagers get this idea about where their food comes from, and what experiences do they have growing up that I may or may not have had that contribute to being more food literate. And so finding out that the time that they spent in their home garden or on their family's farm or ranch, very important. Or time spent in the kitchen with someone else learning how to prepare food, or even being the person that went to the grocery store to purchase food, all contributed to a much more food literate population of young people. And then you had things that detracted from that, and that was really time spent watching television and not being hands-on involved in what we would call a food system.
Yeah. I grew up watching the Food Network all the time, so I felt like I was always learning different things. My mom's like, "How did you know how to do that?" I'm like, "The Food Network, Mom. Ina taught me." But anyways, yeah, and so then from there, the draw to Montana was it the job or the state?
Absolutely, it was the job. So I stayed at Penn State another 4 years after I graduated and did some teaching and did some cooperative extension work. We don't call it cooperative extension in Montana, but it is extension education, public education, and some research. And, it was just the next step was becoming a tenure track faculty member. And so that's what drew me to MSU. There was a job, and I think they were interested in someone who could connect the dots between food and agriculture from a health perspective.
Yeah.
And so that's what landed me here.
Wow. And looking back with your parents in education, did you ever was there a moment during any of that time where you're like, wow, here I am, look at where I landed, not far from where my parents did?
Yes, and it didn't really come until I was in my doctoral program, because when I finished that program, I was like, well, this is what I'm trained to do now. Because if you're not interested in doing this, then you didn't actually need to take that step. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I realized I just carved my path, and it went right to here. And whatever influence my parents had, it was evident then.
Yeah, I think that's special. They probably look at that and are just like so proud, no matter what you did, right, or where you ended up, but just really proud that you now were teaching, right, for 10 years at MSU once you moved here. Wow. Mike, what about you? You grew up in Chicago. Tell us about that.
Not Ohio,
yeah, Chicago eating right. Deep dish pizza.
More Chicago-style hot dogs and dipped beef, but that's okay. I'm the oldest of 5 boys, and so I got my leadership skills and my interest in leadership tested in the fire. Tested in how do you, as the oldest, how are you always the one responsible for making sure everyone's quiet in church, everyone, goes to the bathroom when we get to the restaurant, how do you keep the kids' table quiet while the parents are having conversations over there? So got really interested in that. And then I got interested in politics and government really young. I can't pinpoint the moment, but I started reading the paper every morning at the table. I would take the front page. Another brother would take the sports. Another brother would take the comics. And that's how the paper got distributed in our house. And so I realized that I wanted to do that because I liked the idea of being involved, helping to make change, etc. And so I knew that from the beginning, from when I was in college at the University of Dayton, I'm just up the road from Wyoming, Ohio. And I knew upon graduation that getting to DC was a goal. I wanted to be there. I felt like there was a lot of energy happening. And I also knew that graduate school was something I wanted to tick off the list, but I didn't know when, where, how, why. And I had a professor in college tell me, Mike, just apply. Walk through the door, make somebody else say no to you. And so I did and got into grade school in Washington, D.C., George Washington University to do a Master's of Public Administration degree and started working on Capitol Hill and doing that. And I realized that what motivated me was being involved in change and being involved in the public sector and doing that work. And so that's whenever I've looked at a job in the future or what I wanted to do next, that was always the question. Can I do as much change or more change there? And that's part of what brought me to here, right? This quantum was emerging, the Headwaters Tech Hub was emerging, and it really made me comfortable in doing that and wanting to come here and continue working for a land-grant institution and the public sector. And as we said, right, things here, you learn something new every day, et cetera. But I think growing up in a family of 5 kids, you learn how to deal with chaos and roll with the punches. And you got to make the next decision and you got to make sure that you keep the ball moving forward. Because if you wait for consensus among 5 teenage boys, it is never going to happen. You're going to be waiting a long time. But so I think some of the resiliency and the ability to kind of go with the flow and find solutions to problems really helped. And then on the flip side of how Dr. Harmon grew up, which was outdoors and doing trails and hiking, et cetera, my father believed that why would you camp if there's a Holiday Inn down the road?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He was not an outdoors person. My family was not outdoorsy, and I am now, not by Montana standards outdoorsy, but by the standards of my family, I am incredibly outdoorsy. They
probably look at you and they're like, who is he?
They're like,
what's he doing out there hiking up that mountain? What?
You're sleeping under the stars? What? Why?
What does that mean?
There's a house right there.
Yeah. So what were any highlights from DC that you learned while being there? Because I feel like that's an environment where people are either lifers or they go for a while and then they move out to maybe come back to a home state or their own communities where their family's at.
I would say that if you ever find yourself living and working in DC and you don't get a little tingle down your spine when you see the White House or the Capitol building or the Washington Monument, you don't belong there. There are places where you can affect more change as an individual. There are places where you can be paid better for the work that you're doing. There are plenty of other motivations to have. You have to want to be there. But there's something to being there, right? It is where history is happening. I went to Obama's second inauguration and stood in the crowd, which was super cool. Went and watched the counting of the electoral votes in Congress, went to Supreme Court case where they were hearing arguments, and you get to do all that and you don't think twice about it, and that's super cool. And being out there in your 20s, everybody is there in their 20s, they're single, and they're all trying to change the world. They may be trying to change the world in a very different way than you are, but you're all still motivated to do this, and you aren't out there because you're trying to generate shareholder value. Now, that's an admirable thing in certain professions, but these people are very motivated by that idea of public service and being out there. And so just being in DC, being around the history, walking into a restaurant and you turn and you look and, oh, there's Senator so-and-so sitting down eating dinner. It's, as a politics narrative, was very much, like a kid in a candy store watching it all.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. And I think now we're just hearing both of your stories, a little bit of them. I know we didn't go into huge detail of them, but getting to where we are now, where you're both at MSU, for those that maybe, you mentioned land-grant university, but maybe that aren't as familiar with what does being a land-grant university mean? How are all of the schools connected in the state from a university standpoint? Do you want to give a little background? Alison, we'll just go to you for that.
Sure. And so Penn State is a land-grant university. Montana State University is a land-grant university. These universities have a connection to the communities in the state and a public service role in the state. So Penn State, this was cooperative extension. Every county in the state, just like Montana, has an extension professional or someone who's responsible for extension education. Sometimes there's more than one. So it's a cooperative agreement between the federal government, the state, and the counties. It comes from a history of legislation. Maybe we won't go into that, but the point is that the university has more than an educating students mission. It's educating students, it's conducting research that is important to the state and beyond, and it is the engagement with communities or public service. So that's the tripartite mission we refer to as the land-grant mission.
Wow. And what are some of those things, like what does that mean for a student? So if someone's like, as a student, prospect student looking at colleges, what sets MSU apart as a land-grant university compared to like another college option?
Sure. Land-grant universities tend to have the practical arts as part of them. So colleges of agriculture are usually at the land-grant university. Colleges of engineering are at the land-grant university. So it's those two things that usually set it apart. And then there are other disciplines that go along with them, like in my case, food and nutrition went along with the College of Agriculture. Here it's part of the College of Education, Health and Human Development, and extension professionals, extension specialists, as we call them, who also have a faculty role at MSU, are spread out in several different colleges. So for students, certainly there's an opportunity to have a career track in extension because there's an extension education master's program that you can be part of. But it means that you are going to be at a comprehensive university. So we have lots of disciplines, but there will be an abundance of opportunities to be part of the practical arts.
Well, and just building on that, going back to that original legislation, the whole point of land grants was to educate the sons and daughters of the working families of each given state. And so it was the first time that education had really been democratized and brought down to a level at which the working and middle class could afford it. Up until that point, many universities were founded to teach people law or divinity or medicine, and there had not been this thought towards the practical arts, towards how do you do good agriculture and farming practices, how do you do engineering, how do you do these much more A to B things and less of the kind of big thinking, theoretical, kind of abstract talk that happens in philosophy and divinity, and more like, okay, how do we move society forward with all these much more practical arts?
Yeah, and there's a lot going on at MSU. So, I mean, you guys are a part of that in the system, and we'll get to that. But what are some of those things? You have a new president. You just had a really big leadership changeover. What are and we're on campus. There's lots of construction, which is so fun to see. So many things going on, even with the Innovation Campus. So I'll turn it over to you guys to just talk a little bit about some of those exciting things going on at MSU.
Well, I wish that I had an aerial photograph of MSU in 2004. That was 2 presidents ago. And I think, if you haven't been on campus for 5 years or more, there would be things that you wouldn't recognize. There are streets that are no longer streets, and there are buildings where there weren't buildings before. And I think the campus has grown since I've been here by at least 30% with some of those new resources, and that's really great to see. I think a university that has construction on it means it's a thriving. Mm-hmm. It's a thriving university that's growing and trying to continuously improve how it meets the needs of its students. So, new at MSU. Physical spaces for sure.
I think what else is happening at MSU, we have Q-Core, or Quantum Core, which is a quantum computing facility. Put 3 new buildings on the innovation campus in the last 5 years or so, with a focus of engaging industry much more directly with the university. And then just the expansion of programming. The hospitality program that got originally started in education, health, and human development under Dr. Harmon. We now have a business version of it. We now have certificates at Gallatin College in it. And so really that focus on adapting to what the state needs and adapting to what the community needs and being there to meet them where they are, where the research is going, where innovation is headed, trying to stay a step or two ahead of that so that we can properly meet those needs.
So we talked a little bit about the innovation campus, but if you haven't been in Bozeman or really paid attention in the past 5 years, what is the innovation campus and how did it come to be? I think it's so exciting just to even see EngineWorks, but how did it come to be?
Marcel, I think Innovation Campus is one of the most exciting things at MSU right now, and it's something that I really love talking about. The Innovation Campus proper is about 42 acres that are just maybe 1 mile west of the very center of campus. So at big universities, this would not be considered west of campus. This would be considered, this is just campus. You're going to walk 10 minutes to get there. It's 42 acres, but then adjacent to that is something we call the Advanced Tech Park, which has other structures and buildings that we're using for research. And then there's a foundation seed plot that is used by the College of Agriculture. So this big block of land, I think, will have the identity that is Innovation Campus. There are 3 buildings on the campus to start, but there's plans for 8 more probably in the next 5 to 10 years. The first building was the Applied Research Lab. And this is our classified research facility. It has allowed us to really grow our national security research at MSU. So that's been there since 2017.
And what's going on there? For those cybersecurity research, really, what is going on in that building?
She just asked me what was going on in the classified research.
I know, but overview, I've been in it, not in the classified stuff. They wouldn't let me in that far, but next time maybe.
We have collaborations with industry there. We have collaborations with the Marine Corps, cybersecurity collaborations for sure, Department of Energy collaborations. So I can't tell you the details because I don't know them, and that's just better that way.
Yeah.
But some of those, so that gives you an idea. This is the space that we're working in. The second building was the Aurora building, and this is of course an industry that has roots in research at MSU in optics and photonics, and they're working on their self-driving vehicles. And that's really exciting to have a connection with that kind of really applied work in that field, and Aurora's a great partner with MSU as a research partner. And then the third building you mentioned, it's EngineWorks, and this is a space where a lot of different industries can have space to be companies, or it could be a space for companies that spin out of MSU research, or it can be MSU research. So Mike mentioned the Q core. This is our quantum applied core, and this is a space where we want to develop a test bed that companies can use to test their equipment in very cold environments, because that's what it takes to run a quantum device. But the whole idea with Innovation Campus is that it is a space where we purposely collide industry, research, and student opportunities. MSU is about student opportunities. And so if they can have internship opportunities or real world problem solving or work experience or job opportunities eventually, this is the whole idea. And it's a way to give our researchers a platform or a space that puts them into regular proximity with companies that are applying the work that they're doing.
And I've been through it a couple of times, and the last time I was there, it was really fun to see. He was a former student, and they're like working on getting, I think, space in EngineWorks, but he was using one of the conference spaces and came out and was just chatting a little bit about what he's working on and what EngineWorks has done for him at this point, which is providing good collision space, different events and things going on at that building for innovators and students, research people to all come together. And it's been really cool to see it starting to fill up, which is the DIU maybe going in there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know they can only say so much, but a little bit.
Yeah, so DIU stands for Defense Innovation Unit, and Montana was recently awarded a DIU on-ramp. And the whole point of DIU is to grant innovative companies and technologies more access to the Department of Defense. I believe that we're the 4th or 5th state to get a DIU on-ramp, which will be a huge deal for Montana. It puts professionals on the ground who are working with DoD, who are trying to find companies here in Montana and help them get more plugged in to the Department of Defense and everything that they're doing, right? People think of Department of Defense, the first thing they think of are soldiers and planes and ships, but DoD does healthcare, DoD does logistics, DoD does communications, DoD does all these different things that you need to run a military with 2 million people in it. Mm-hmm. They think about nutrition and food. They think about all kinds of avenues in which they can best support our national security. And so the DIU on-ramp will help with that, help get people plugged into it. And again, just builds on this legacy of national security research that we have at the university.
And it's a huge deal, I think, to get that. It was Montana, Kentucky, and Minnesota in this last launch, if I'm not mistaken. I think those were like the 3 states, which in this latest one, which was cool and exciting. And I just think what's going on out there is really exciting for MSU with, I think, plans for other buildings, like you said, to just tie more programming that MSU has into what is coming at the Innovation Campus. So where do you guys tie it? So your economic development for MSU, tell us a little bit about what are you all doing? What's your day-to-day like?
Well, the research enterprise at MSU is big. It's bigger than I knew when I accepted this position because you never know exactly what you're getting into.
And how did you? Let's just go down that really quickly. So we'll get back on track. But since you mentioned it, you went from teaching and just some different roles. What then got you to this role that you now have?
Yeah, that's a great question. What got me to this role was President Wada Cruzado.
Okay.
So she's a great champion and a great mentor, and I think that she knew that after 7 years of being dean that there's probably going to be a next step for Alison. Wouldn't it be great if it were at MSU? Uh-huh. And so this role became suddenly open when our current VPR left for another opportunity in another state. And so she said, how about stepping into this role? And I had to think about it. I was at the airport about to board a plane to Phoenix with my daughter for a dance competition. And so I said, well, let me think about it on the flight. It was a very turbulent flight.
Okay.
But I didn't really have to think about it that long. I knew that if she thought that was a good opportunity for me and that this would be something that I could be successful at, that she was probably right. Mm-hmm. And so I trusted her judgment on that. So yeah, by the time I got to Phoenix, we were having another phone call and I was saying, yeah, I'm going to try that.
Let's do it.
What happens at MSU when you just get appointed to a role like that is you end up having to apply for it. So about a year and a pinch later, I went through the process of being a candidate in a national search for this position. And, if you can't compete in the national search, then you probably shouldn't be in the position. But it turned out to, that was a successful process for me. And I was very pleased to be appointed permanent.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. And it's obviously your work ethic and experience has aided you, right, to be the right fit for that role.
Yeah, so the research enterprise is it's like a 4-legged stool. I like to think of it as we're doing research development with faculty, so supporting their ambitions, their expertise, turning those into fundable ideas that we call grants, and submitting those mostly to the federal government, not exclusively, but a lot of our work is supported by the federal government. That's research development. We also have 2 other departments that are dealing more with compliance. One is our research integrity and compliance unit that tries to keep us safe. We're working with radiation, we're working with lasers, we're working with animals, and there are a lot of rules. There are a lot of guidelines that need to be followed, and so that's the unit that makes sure that we're doing everything in the right way. And then as far as fiscal compliance, we have our Office of Sponsored Programs. So they're going to, at a high level, manage the grants that we accept from federal and sometimes private entities and make sure that we're spending them according to the rules of that agency or whatever the funder is. And then we have the economic development, and this is where Mike comes in. So this is the research translation arm of what we do, and it's really to ensure that we are having an impact. That what we're doing is we're maximizing the value of the effort that we put into the basic research, the applied research. How is it affecting the state of Montana?
Mike, what's your day-to-day like? And that kind of, there's a lot, and MSU's big. It's a big system. You guys have a lot going on.
Yeah, the day-to-day is different every day, but a lot of it is doing exactly what Alison just mentioned, getting things out of labs and out of classrooms and out of academic journals and out of the same set of experts talking about it and making sure that the rest of the world knows what we're doing and everybody else understands why Montana State University is a good investment for the state of Montana, why it's a good investment of federal dollars into our research enterprise, and letting people know, hey, this is coming, start to prepare yourself. So right now in workforce, the big fear is AI, right? Mm-hmm. AI is going to come, it's going to get all of our jobs, and none of us are going to have anything to do. But it's going around and helping individuals around the state see, hey, we're also doing research in photonics and optics, which requires a lot of hands-on, a lot of small little problem solving. We're doing research in quantum computing, quantum manufacturing. Quantum manufacturing is not like the manufacturing in the Midwest where you have mile-long assembly lines and 3 shifts and 18,000 workers. It's 10 people working in a small warehouse with a 5-way machine being able to do this very precise at the nanometer scale type of manufacturing. Stuff
we have one in Billings too.
Exactly.
And it's like, it is just what you described. I don't even know if they have 10 people.
It's stuff we can do right here in Montana, and you could go work on super high-tech manufacturing and then go play in the mountains or go work on the family ranch or family farm. You can do both those things. You can have an innovative, technologically savvy career and still live in Montana. And I think that that's one of the things that we are working hard at trying to tell the story. Part of being a land-grant is you want to see Montana succeed too. It's great if Montana State University is succeeding and we're being successful and we're going to do what we can here to make that happen. But we need to also be talking to all of our partners around the state to make sure that they also know what's happening and can plug back into the university, and we can provide the supports that we can to continue to drive that success and make it a flywheel so that it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, and I think a credit to you, just seeing you more engaged with the Montana Economic Developers Association. So MEDA, that's a great organization. We've had Alison on the podcast, but just to connect with economic developers across the state, because they then are plugged into those communities. And we've seen just good things come from getting connected with you all and being now connected with what they're doing with the DIU on-ramp and other things happening at MSU, so that we can pull some of that knowledge, connections, and some of those things into our own communities back to wherever we are at across the state of Montana. So I think that's been fun to work with your guys', well, you, but by nature of both of you through that. Alison, I have a question for you. Congratulations on a record-breaking year of research expenditures, $288 million. Like, whoa, that's a large number to think about and very impressive. How many years in a row has MSU been setting that record, right? Like, that's a record-breaking, but it's like you've just been breaking record of some of that spend.
So this acceleration of research at MSU has been about a decade long. And so it's been growing rapidly for about a decade. And we've broken the record 9 out of the last 10 years.
Wow.
So we're continuing to increase our expenditures. And maybe we should just talk about expenditures and what that means.
Let's dive into that. And what's in the portfolio? Like what's going on there?
Okay. We celebrate spending money, and I think that's a weird thing to do. So let's just talk about where expenditures come from. So we can't spend money as an institution unless we are awarded that money. So that's the first thing you know about MSU, is that we're getting more competitive as university researchers. And so we are awarded those dollars because we've written a compelling proposal. And when the dollars get spent, that means we've achieved the objectives that we set out. So instead of celebrating the expenditures, we can celebrate that we had good ideas, that were more competitive than other universities' ideas, and we've accomplished what we set out to do. And ultimately, we've maximized the impact of that through what we call this research translation and economic development.
And is that competitive? When you say it's more competitive and MSU is getting more competitive, is that on a national scale or a global scale or a little bit of both?
I would say it's on a national scale, but certainly we have things that are unique at MSU globally too. Mm-hmm. And those are things that we're proud of, and we can partner with universities in other places in the world as well as many entities in the United States.
And what were some of those things within that portfolio over this past year, some projects?
Well, let me just explain how we essentially develop a portfolio at MSU, because I think there's a lot of different ways to think about it. I think from an expenditure perspective, it might be good to know that about half of those federal dollars that we have been awarded are from the Department of Defense. There's another big slice of the pie that is from Department of Health and Human Services, and then U.S. Department of Agriculture and the National Science Foundation. So those would be our four biggest funders, and then there are 9 other agencies that are smaller slices of the pie. So that gives you some idea of, what are they working on? We're working on agriculture. We're working on health. We're working on engineering, and we're working on things that are applicable to the Department of Defense. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we have 7 academic colleges. It's another way to think about what's in their portfolio. The biggest research college is agriculture. So we're doing things that are important to the producers and ranchers of the state of Montana. And that's a key focus for Montana. So precision agriculture is in there. We're developing new hybrid seed varieties for producers to try to combat issues related to pest management, and looking at how to mitigate drought and predict drought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
which
water,
is a big thing in the state of Montana.
Water is a key concern for a lot of our stakeholders in agriculture. Otherwise, engineering is a big college. Letters and science includes departments like microbiology and physics and chemistry and biochemistry, and so heavy research work in those areas. And then, of course, our College of Nursing and Education, Health, and Human Development are doing a lot of health-related, community-related work. And then we have business. It has a smaller portfolio. It's less dependent on external funding, but certainly doing some important work in marketing and those fields. And then a lot of creative scholarship going on in arts and architecture. So I don't like to forget some of the areas that are not so dependent on external funding, but still a lot of really exciting and interesting things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think an important piece to point out here, right, is, quite a bit of our funding comes from the federal government, and why is that set up like that? What happened? How did we get that way? And it was after World War II. There was a gentleman who had been working for President Roosevelt at the time. His name was Vanderveer Bush, and they came up with this idea for the National Institutes of Health. And then the whole concept was not that the National Institutes of Health was going to have labs just in D.C. or New York or San Francisco or wherever the big cities were. They were going to say, hey, we are going to ask our universities to do this, to spin up their research enterprise, to invest in lab space, to invest in professorships, to invest in everything that you need to make a research enterprise successful. And so we started doing that as a country. And that's why so many ideas have bubbled up from the researcher and not from the federal government down. It allows researchers to be creative and come up with ideas and have weird teamings happening. I can think of one where we have a computer scientist, a nursing professor, and a mechanical engineer all working together on the same project designed at doing monitoring using something like a Garmin or an Oura Ring of soldiers in the field and identifying, are they attentive, are they still alert, can they still perform at the highest levels out in a combat situation or while out on patrol or whatever they might be doing. But that's not going to happen because someone sat in an office in Washington, D.C. and decided, I need you to do this. you needed to draw from the experiences of those individuals. You know, the nurse having worked in a clinical environment, the engineering professor who is a National Guard member, and having that experience in the field, right? And being able to take that and then move forward on it. And so this was the whole promise of that research enterprise. Devolve it down from the federal government, put it out in all 50 states, have people on the ground being experts in these fields and coming up with ideas, and then coming back to the federal government saying, hey, I could use a few dollars for this. And then we can make that investment and move it forward. And I think that that's the coolest part about university research, is that it is not top-down dictated. It is researcher up. The researcher has the idea, and they have to prove that it's a good one in order to get that money.
What are some other examples? Like, that's a really cool example. Do you guys have other examples of some things that MSU research has done and come up with?
One of the wildest things that we've ever done.
Okay, let's hear it. I want to hear it.
And they've yet to find a way to commercialize it. So one of the problems in many war zones is after the conflict is over, there's still mines buried in the ground. And what one of our researchers here did is he partnered with a researcher at another institution, and they trained bees to be able to find the chemical, one of the chemicals that leaks out of mines. I can't remember the name of it, but they could smell the chemical in there, and then they would congregate over the mine. And then he can shoot a laser beam out over the field, and the way that they could tell that the bees had found it is that their wings started flapping faster. And so instead of using dogs or robots or whatever to do landmine detection, you could just bring a little beehive out, open it in the field, and all of a sudden they locate over all the mines. Now, again, as far as I know, they haven't commercialized it. It has not become the preferred method for landmine discovery. But right, you get a couple people together and they start brainstorming ideas, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can help you detect that. You have these bees, like you can, let's put these together and see what can happen. On a much more practical level, one of our centers is called the SNOW facility, or Geoswirl facility, and they focus on geospatial mapping and then using photonics sensors, et cetera, to detect snowpack and stuff around the state. And they just had a graduate student who did a bunch of research where what she discovered is she took two sides of a watershed, one side that had been affected by wildfire, another side that hadn't, and she determined how much of the snowpack, how high the snowpack got while in that watershed, and then how fast it would melt off. And in a city like Bozeman, we're a closed basin. We don't have access to a river. We rely on snowpack up high. And they determined which side had more snow, but then also which side melted slower. So then you didn't have these water scarcity conditions later in the summer. And it was really interesting research. But again, it's solving a problem that is Montana focused, or even the American West focused, right? Where you don't have water laying around like even you did in Ohio or Chicago, et cetera, in the Midwest.
Yeah, dang it. We're really reliant on snow, rain,
and
fire.
So how do you manage those resources? How does a wildland fire impact that? And so it's work like that. And, we can look again and again and again at work that's happening at Montana State University that is directly focused on the challenges that we face here in Montana.
Yeah, those are really cool examples of just like real life, like people here in Bozeman are solving those problems, probably solving some pretty cool things as we are sitting here in this cool PBS studio space, which is pretty cool. What are some other things that you guys are working on that you're excited about in this next year and as we're coming up into 2026?
I'd love for Mike to share some examples from our College of Nursing, because this is a college so nursing has 5 campuses in the state, and we are just getting started, in some cases finishing new buildings for each of those campuses, thanks to a very, very generous gift from a donor. And our nurses are out there. And they're out there getting trained. They're out there doing their clinical experiences, and our nursing faculty are out there as well, and they're working on all kinds of things. But I think Mike has a couple good examples of things that could be directly impactful on Montana communities.
And I think what's really cool, before Mike gets into that, from my understanding, so my cousin went through it, so it's like fun, close to home. But like Billings is getting one built in other communities, as you mentioned. But we have had all of these communities that you mentioned have had MSU nursing students in them, just maybe like ours has been in MSU Billings, and now they'll have their own facility building that is College of Nursing Montana State University, thanks to this really lovely donor. But having these students that are MSU students, but they're within our own communities learning healthcare, and where they want to end up landing once they graduate, which is really cool. And I think they do it in their last 2 years. They then relocate out of Bozeman into some of these other campuses across the state. What are some cool research applications to that?
Yeah, there's a ton. And there's just a ton of work that nursing is doing that is impactful and important. As we know, across our state, a lot of communities can't afford a doctor, or a doctor isn't choosing to locate there. And so we rely on folks like our nurse practitioners and nurses and physician's assistants to be in those communities providing that care. Now, our nurses are doing all sorts of things. And the first one that comes to mind for me is in our tribal communities around the state. There has been in the past some stigmatism around women's healthcare and seeking treatment for things like breast cancer, et cetera. And so our nursing college, along with the tribes and tribal colleges around the state and our partners, helped design an education campaign to get Native women engaging with the healthcare sector and to talk about those things and to have those conversations to receive the treatment that they need in order to be successful going forward. That's one. Another one is the nursing researcher who did the work on the trial wear. It's not trial wear, on the garment thing, the Oura ring garment thing. She now has a project that they call trial wear. And this project is, if you are somebody who's going through a drug trial, there are specific protocols that you have to follow. For example, you might not be able to take aspirin because they don't know how that's going to interact with the drug that they're testing out. And so what they've developed is this patch that mounts right on the patient's chest who's in the drug trial. And if let's say they get in a car accident and they can't talk, but they come into the ER and they pull open their shirt and they see this patch, they can scan the QR code and get everything that they can and cannot give that patient, what messes up the protocol, et cetera. And as we know, a lot of patients that are in drug trials, this is their last effort. Mm-hmm. They've tried everything else. They said, hey, I'll be the experiment here, because if this works, this saves my life. Mm-hmm. And the last thing you want to do is give a patient in a drug trial the wrong drug or something that disqualifies them from that last hope that they have. And our nursing professor speaks about an exact incident where that happened, where a 6-year-old child was given the wrong drugs in the ER and all of a sudden had to be pulled out of the drug trial.
That could have saved.
But this trial wear patch is meant to be, it's sticky enough so that it sticks to the person, but the way that the adhesive is formulated is it can pull off without pain off the person as well. So it is incredible science that allows us to do the work of trying these drug trials in human subjects in real environments, and hopefully not mess it up and be able to get all the way to the end and say, hey, that drug worked. Wow. We now have a new treatment for juvenile cancer. Hey, that drug didn't work. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board and start again. But it allows more participants to stay in those. And it allows, one of the gaps in drug trials is that we don't have rural patients because they can't get the treatment. Right. They can't get to those centers. And it's often hard to find elderly patients as well. Montana punches above our weight in both of those categories in participants in drug trials. And you can easily attribute it to some of the work that that professor had done.
But and I think what's really cool about that example, it's just very telling of what you talked about earlier, of it's not top down, it's bottom up, where they see a problem and they're like, hi, I'm going to come up with this solution and here it is. And then like, government, do you want to buy it or whatever? Maybe they don't, or someone else cool wants to come in and buy it. But I think that's a really cool example.
Well, but right, it's finding that challenge and saying, hey, we have this idea, we want to scale it, or we want to find a way to work, or we want to find a way to prove that it works, right? That's 9/10 of the battle. Like, we think this is going to work, but how do we prove it? And so it's moving those ideas from somebody sitting at their desk or driving their car or in the shower or whatever, coming up with it, and then getting that money to go forward and do it.
That's a really powerful MSU story. I like it. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Alison, you oversee a really big team department. There's like, you guys have big projects, lots of money coming in, going out for all of this research. What would you say you've learned over the years as you've worked at MSU for now 21 years, but how has your leadership style developed and grown through those experiences?
Yeah, I think that the personality tests I've taken over the past 15 years have shown kind of an evolution of things that are required for leadership. And so I've become less task-oriented and more people-oriented, because I think as dean, I realized it's the people that are doing everything. And the tasks are second, because the people and their way of working and their skill sets and their limitations, but also their really unique capabilities are the things that make this work. And so as the leader, how do you get the right people in the right places, and how do you cultivate them as leaders so that their skill sets can be, they can have a fulfilling career, and they can also serve kind of the best and highest purpose that the university has for them. And sometimes that the university doesn't have it for them, and they need to then go elsewhere for their next step. But that's okay, because I think that as a university, we're in the business of growing people, and sometimes they grow out of the institution. So that's fine. We're doing our job. Mm-hmm. So I think for me personally, the things that I've learned are that how important it is to listen. I love solving problems, but sometimes we try to solve a problem before we actually listen to what the problem is, and therefore you don't actually know what the problem is. So listening first before you take any action, and so that's just the most important thing I can say about leadership. Listening, and then being a very clear communicator, and knowing who you need to communicate when and how. You can't communicate too much as a university leader. And then just about people, like people are packages, and they have weaknesses and they have strengths, and you get the whole package. So it's no good to think like as dean, I don't get to choose who I'm going to work with. As a faculty member, you kind of do. Mm-hmm. You get to say, I'm going to part with that person, but I'm not working with them anymore. As a dean, you don't get to choose. So you have to use all the packages that you have, and you have to make sure that they're all serving the purpose. Mm-hmm. I refer sometimes to Mike as faculty are wild Mustangs.
Okay.
You can't break them. They have to run. And what your job as the leader is to get them running in the right direction.
Yeah. And building trust. Which, how do you do that?
Communication and transparency and being in the listening part. Like all of these things contribute to a really trusting relationship. I'm going to be honest with you, and I can't always make a decision that is going to make you happy. I have to make the best decision for the organization. So that's another thing about dean versus faculty is I can look at the whole organization, and I'm in charge of the health of that organization. I'm not just in charge of your career or my career. Mm-hmm. So everything I do needs to be about caring about people, but also thinking about what's the best thing to do that makes this organization stronger. So I think the structure is really important, understanding the structure, getting it right, reorganizing when you have to, and yeah, really listening.
And listening, yeah. I really like that. Mike, what would you add? I mean, what would you add? You guys are also, I think, too, so that's internal, right? But then you're big players, not just in Bozeman and even across the state of Montana, but nationally, as you look amongst other like land-grant universities and other universities across the country. So how does that leadership then translate into those settings?
Well, I think that in order to have partnerships, you have to do the same thing. You have to say, we're good at this and you're good at that, and we're going to complement each other versus compete with each other sometimes, and making that argument that we fit together, and this is how we're going to be stronger working together. And that's the same with industry too. We need to develop more industry partnerships and knowing what is it that you need. And what is it that we have that we can be a supportive partner in this game?
Well, and I think to VP Harmon's point, right? If I know you and I trust you, we can work through whatever the challenge is, no matter how much we disagree, no matter what's going on. The last 2 jobs I've had, both at the city and at MSU, the first thing that Alison and my boss at the city did was they gave me a list of people. It's like, just go talk to them. Like, go talk to them. And it is unbelievable how many times that has paid dividends over and over and over again. Because, at that time, there might not be an ask. There might not even be anything natural for us to be working on together. But there's quite a few people around campus and around the state who I can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, this is going on. Can you help me with it? Hey, wait, what do you need? Hey, I have a problem with what just happened. Can we address that? And building that trust and that relationship first has allowed the bigger questions to be asked and answered and to keep moving forward. And if I know that we are aligned and that we are pulling the oars together in the same direction, there's a lot that we can do. But if I'm sitting there questioning your motivations or questioning what you're doing because I have not built that relationship with you, there is very little that we can do to actually get the big things going forward. And so I think whether it's here at the university, whether it's across the state, I try to focus on us as a university being accessible to people, being understandable to people, and being there to listen and being there to say, hey, sometimes we have ideas, but a lot of the time we need to listen to what your problem is first, figure out how to marry you up with the right people at the university or the right programs, the right avenue to keep things going forward. But every job I've had, every leadership thing I've ever done, it's always been people first. And if you get too caught up in the task or the work and you have too much of an ego about it, or you have too much of a, hey, that's my thing, I need credit for it, you're not going to get the job done. And it's way better to find the relationship, figure out how to work through the problem, and then keep moving forward, rather than dwelling on, oh, that person was mean to me, or that person said something the wrong way, or whatever. And instead focus on, hey, I have a relationship with them. We can get over that. Like, we'll talk later. Let's keep the task moving forward.
And Alison, you've been through you said a few presidents. So like those are really big changes for big systems like MSU. What's some of your advice to organizations that are going through like a leadership change or change of leadership, and how do you navigate those times?
I think what has been in my head for the past 6 months is how do I continue to support the success of this institution? And when you have a new president, your job is to support their success and their vision, and to be a good pillar underneath them to hold them up, and that can be very rewarding. And so if you've chosen the leader for your organization, I guess this would be my advice, then you need to let them lead and you need to support them. And, if you find yourself in this space where you're working against them, then that's not a good situation. And that might be time to excuse yourself and go and find an opportunity elsewhere. But if you can be supportive of them and help them achieve what it is they're trying to achieve, then that's a recipe for success, not just for that leader, but it's for the whole institution. So just thinking about how can strong research be supportive of a new president, and how can we orient the new president to the things that we do so that they feel comfortable talking about what is the research enterprise at MSU. And President Tessman has arrived, and
tell us about what are you excited about with your new leader?
Yeah, well, I love that he is excited about learning, and he's really taken advantage of the opportunities to be part of the many things that have happened at MSU this fall, just in research, and shown up for activities, shown up to talk to partners, and made people's days by visiting their lab and talking to their students. And so I think immersing himself, not being afraid of being confronted by things that, Mike and I don't understand either, but we at least understood some of the language around, like quantum, for example.
I'm still learning. And what's a simple way to describe quantum to someone, but
we don't have to understand it all. That's not our job. My job is to clear the way for research to happen at MSU. And I think that we have a current president that is really going to be a partner in helping clear the way for some of the obstacles that we face. I'm very pleased about that.
And that's exciting.
And I mean, I think the other thing that the president is doing already, and you can see it in the showing up everywhere, is leaning into this idea that the university is a part of Montana, Montana is a part of the university. We need to, as an institution of higher education, lean into the state, lean into the community, and continue to be engaged and be involved and showing up everywhere all the time, all at once. It's like there's a public event happening in the state. Oh, there's MSU people there. Oh, there's this big report that came out. Oh, MSU people contributed to it. But just reminding people that universities don't exist in an ivory tower. And if we're existing in an ivory tower, we're not doing our jobs. Our jobs is to be out and in the community and serving the state of Montana. And I think that he's really leaning into that, and I'm excited to see how that evolves as he spends more time on the ground in the state. Yeah,
because he's been here a couple months. As we're into fall, but this is his first year, which is exciting. And I have seen him at events and speaking. So I think, and I see you all the time, so that's fun. So we're all across the state all the time doing great work. And it's been really fun to have you two on. I've been wanting to sit and chat with you for a while, so thank you. Before we go, I have a couple rapid-ish fire questions. So my first one for both of you, they're all for both of you. What's your favorite thing to do in Montana?
Well, from my little Girl Scout experience as a kid, I love being outdoors, and I love being outdoors in every season. So I've got stuff I like to do in every season, and I don't mix them. And I'm not someone who's going to cross-country ski down the street in the summer or ride my bike through the snow in the winter. That's counter-seasonal. Yeah, it is. I love being on the water in the summer, and I love being on the snow in the winter, for sure.
That's really fun.
Outdoor activities, number one thing. Number two thing, I love the fine arts. I love music. I love live theater. I love art exhibitions. And so when it's not so nice to be outdoors, I have other things I like to do indoors. And then number three, anything Bobcat.
Bobcats go.
I'm going to root for the Bobcats on courts or fields or wherever they are. And that's really an enriching part of being part of MSU.
Yeah, it's a fun culture. And I have to ask, before we get to Mike's answer, what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
The ones, I don't know if they still exist, but it used to be one that had caramel and coconut and chocolate.
The Samoas?
Yeah. Do they still exist?
I think they call them something different.
Too.
Mine too.
Because they've evolved over time.
Good. Yeah. Those are my favorite. Okay. Yours is Samoa. What's your favorite thing to do in Montana?
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's the reason why I moved here. It's being outside, and it's being just out and about doing things, hiking. I've taken up trail running since moving to Montana. I'd always been a runner, but now getting to disappear into the mountains for a few hours and go for a run is great. And being one of those psychotic people that runs up mountains instead of hiking slowly, comfortably up them. Since having a daughter, it is like just being outside with her and watching her. And unfortunately, we have raised our child that she wants to be outside no matter what is happening weather-wise. So
yeah, seasonal. There's things to do no matter what.
Freezing cold, she wants to be outside. It's pouring rain, she wants to be outside. Hey, can we go play in the sandbox? No, there's a torrential downpour happening. Like, we can't go play in the sandbox. But it is being out doing that. And then one of the things that I really like about Montana is the deep history all over the state. You walk into any community, you can find some really cool history. One of my personal favorite Montana facts is the oldest continuously operating Chinese restaurant in the country is in Butte, Montana.
Yeah, it was like Butte, America.
Exactly. And a century ago, more languages were spoken in Butte than almost anywhere else in the country. And just this incredible history of the West, of what happened, of the kind of promise of America and that spirit, like you can make it anywhere if you just work hard and get up early enough and grind hard enough, you can get there. And I think you can see that all over the state and all over these communities of these small little shops that have been there since 1896 when the first settlers rolled into town. Mm-hmm. And you can really see that environment and what's happening there.
Those are fun. Those are good. Yeah. Okay. My next question is, you guys have very public-facing, busy jobs. How do you unplug and unwind? At the end of a day, at the end of a week?
Do you?
Marcel,
like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know. Me neither. But here we are. What's that mean?
It's absolutely important. And if I can get a weekend where there isn't any work, that's going to be a better Monday. So I do think it's important to rest your brain. And I like Marcel, I like reading books about murder.
I love it. I love a good murder mystery.
Because that's not part of my life. I mean, thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully,
And so it's a let's go to a different world for a little while. I love going to see the movies. Actually, that's another way to get into a different world. Just like, let's take a break from this world. And let's meditate a little bit. That's another nice thing you can do. Let's do some yoga.
Relax our mind.
Let's rejuvenate our spirit. Let's have some good self-care.
A good murder book. I like that a lot. Yeah, I love a murder mystery. So, Mike, what about you? What do you do?
I'm in my parks era. Not national parks. Slides, swings,
I love that
seesaws. And so it is very much taking my almost 3-year-old now and going to the park. And she will do climb the same ladder, go down the same slide over and over again. But she is so excited about it and so stoked that we get to go to the park. Going to the park with Dada, looking for the other kids that might show up in the neighborhood, seeing if they come, seeing if there's a little baseball game going on at the field, right? Like she's so curious and wants to see all that. And like that is the way that I remind myself of what I'm doing, because talking about like what motivated me and why I do the work that I do, now my running thing is I do economic development to ensure that it is very, very hard for my child to leave the state of Montana.
Future governor of the state of Montana, Mike's daughter.
We will support her
We're
doing
ready.
whatever she wants to do, but I would love to have her stay here, have the grandbabies down the street, be able to pop over for dinner on a Wednesday night. Like, that would be excellent, and that's the future that I'm trying to build.
I love that, yeah. Slides, murder mysteries. These are murder, and maybe not even murder mystery, murder books. That's really good. Okay. My last question for both of you is, what's some of the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, I do have a good piece, and this is from, once again, my friend Wada Cruzado. She said, it must be exhausting at night trying to be something that you're not. You must be exhausted. Let me try to rephrase how she said it. You must be exhausted at night trying to pretend you're something you're not. And what she meant was just be yourself, Alison, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, be authentic.
Just be your own self.
I really like that. She always, whenever she spoke, I always got like goosebumps because she just was so, she left a really good legacy for MSU.
For sure.
Mike, what's yours?
Well, there's two of them. The first one is, and it's what I said earlier, don't close any doors on yourself. Do not close any opportunities off to yourself. Create options so that if you get to that fork in the road when you're like, I need to make a change, you have multiple doors to walk through. As soon as you start closing doors and not making somebody else do that for you, you're going to get caught and you're going to find yourself stuck in a situation. And then I forgot what the second one was.
Dang it. That one was good.
Oh, I know what it is.
Okay.
Well, it's actually a quote from a congresswoman, Shirley Chisholm. She was one of the first black congresswomen from Brooklyn. She said, if you're not at the table, bring a folding chair. And it's this idea of like, you know where you should be, get yourself in those rooms. Get yourself involved and be involved. And like, don't be afraid to step out and take a risk. They may still not let you set up the folding chair, but bring the folding chair anyway.
Set it up anyway, so I really like that. Well, thank you both. It's been so fun. Where can people get connected with you and learn more about MSU and all that you have going on?
Researchmontana.edu. We are connected to the homepage right at the top.
Awesome.
And you can find our contact information easily using that method.
Awesome.
And the biggest thing is just reach out. Like, we're doing research across fields ranging from sound engineering to trial wear tags to quantum computing to photonics to semiconductor manufacturing. Like, it spans the gamut to genetics in beef and cattle, right? It spans the gamut, and there's probably something happening at MSU that you would be interested in learning more about.
Awesome. Thank you, Alison and Mike.
Thanks,
Thank
Marcel.
you.
Thanks for listening to The Vault. Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway or Instagram at The Vault_201. Or check us out on our website, thevault@201.com, where you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter. See you next time.